is going on, everybody? Welcome to podcast episode 59. We're joined today by Nate Johnson, founder of GLCS Inc., as well as a few other things in our industry. We're going to be dropping some massive wisdom and other things. He said mostly other things. So just before we hop into today's show, we got to get through that efRouting top hauls of the week. We have had a little bit of delays getting these out. That's not on them. That's completely on me. But now we're all back home on the setup. So best drive-in lane of the week going to be a Findlay, Ohio to Blackstone, Virginia. 584 miles between 2.5 and 3.2, which, I mean, to be honest, going north to south on that lane, as long as it's not too heavy, pretty solid lane, to be honest, these days. We got West Virginia over to North Carolina. 2.7 to almost 4.4 on the high end. Again, some crazy numbers. On the reefer side, we got a La Crosse, Wisconsin over to Indianapolis. Around 450 on the miles, 3.4 to almost $4 a mile. I mean, for reefer, like, it sounds crazy, but for reefer, it's not that crazy. Chicago, Illinois over to Crossville, Tennessee, 550 on the miles, 3.2 to 5.1, which is pretty crazy, to be honest, on a reefer. Getting into the flatbed, we got a Dayton, Ohio over to Philly, 530 on the miles, between 3 and 3.2. Pretty average flatbed lane there. Springfield, Illinois to Columbus. Again, pretty solid flatbed numbers. Nothing that sticks out there. Best loop for drive-in for the week is going to be a Cumberland, Maryland starting point. Over to New York, going over to Akron, then to Lafayette, Milwaukee, back to Maryland. On a 4 or 5 day route to make 5.4 to 6.5 gross, almost to the $3 mark on the high end on 4 days. Not bad, man. Getting into the best loop for reefer, it's going to be a Findlay, Ohio to Baltimore, Baltimore to Springfield, Mass, over to Philly, back to Springfield, and back to Findlay. On 4 or 5 days, 6.4 to almost $8,000. Not going to be complaining. You make $8,000 Monday to Thursday, that's for sure on reefer. And for flatbeds, staying mostly in the south, I guess starting in the south in Philadelphia, Mississippi, over to Greenville, South Carolina, then to Columbus, Pittsburgh, back to Philly. Again, 4 days, $7,000, over $3 a mile. Nothing to complain about there. That's going to be it for the efRouting top hauls of the week. Let's get into today's show with Nate Johnson. What's going on, man?
Oh, not much, brother. How you been?
Hey, I'm good, man. Just being sick and getting over being sick, trying not to be sick anymore.
Sick again, so sick. So fair enough.
Yeah, tis the season, man. How are you doing? What's up with you?
I'm doing good. I'm on my last trip of the year, which is a big deal. Down in Chicago, so headed back tonight. Sitting at a Westin right at the moment in the lobby, so hopefully no craziness happens here. But yeah, excited for the last trip of the year. I mean, that's a meaningful thing to me. I posted about it yesterday. This one's a little later in the year than usual. It's the 18th, but it's time for the holidays. So
yeah, wrapping up all the business, dotting the I's, crossing the T's. Are you planning on booking yourself? Maybe you could hitchhike with a truck back home, man. Could be passenger.
Yeah, I'll fly. So I'll fly. I'm good. I'm good with that. I've got a lot of miles on trucks. So I still miss driving. Tristan Bordello was out in Houston last week.
Yeah, I just saw him driving, some content of him driving a truck back home.
And I think, I would love to do that. I typically don't have the time to do anything like that, but absolutely love to do that. I miss driving. I drove for a long time, and it's a passion of mine. I love driving. I still drive my pickup a lot, but I love road trips. So, but to jump in a truck and take off, that would be a tough one for me. So.
I mean, this joke would have been a lot more funny maybe a week or two or even a month ago with the rates, how they were. But I've seen the rates climbing. Obviously, we got a holiday push on our hands. So I was going to say you could post yourself for like 50 cents a mile to get yourself back home in a full trailer. But that's not the case. That's not the case these days.
Right. No, not at all. So, well, I'll get there one right now. So.
Yeah. All right, man, let's hop into it. How did you get into logistics? What was your first job in this industry?
So my first job. So how did I get in logistics? This was the best way to put it. So I went to school for law enforcement, and I remember when I was a kid, and in or around that time when I was in college, my neighbor who was a truck driver was backing his truck down the road, and my dad turned to me and said, "There's no way you could do that." And basically, that's what got me in the truck. So
Wait, your
I,
dad told you that you wouldn't be able
yeah,
to
he
ever
was
back
like,
up a
he,
trailer.
exactly. He was like, you can't back a truck up. And so that was about just shy of 30 years ago. And, uh, shortly after that, I decided that I didn't want to go into law enforcement. And I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. So I thought, I'm going to go prove my dad wrong. And I went and I got my Class A. And I drove over the road mostly to just soul search and go see what
Yeah, I
kind of,
mean, that's the thing when you don't really know exactly what you
yeah,
want to do in life. I mean, truck driving is always going to be a good option in those
right.
types of situations.
So I was young and I just went and technically, before then I was doing some stuff in the industry. I was dispatching for a towing company, working for a towing company, that type of thing. But I ended up driving over the road for a while, then came back into town, liked the industry a lot, went back and did some more work for the towing company that I previously worked at, but was doing heavy duty recovery. Became a manager there, eventually switched to more traditional trucking around bulk company in town,
Oh
running
yeah, I mean,
safe
what kind of? So let's
dispatch.
just get into that. When you started, what kind of OTR were you doing? Like full OTR? You were going
Yeah,
everywhere?
full OTR drive-in. So driving for
Right.
Gainey Transportation, GTS out of Michigan, and I went
There.
to a school in Fordyce, Arkansas, and it was an experience. So those
Yeah,
type of
that's
schools don't exist today. Um,
that sounds like how bad was the backing up? Did you actually have anxiety? Because I've always said it on the podcast, like my biggest fear and one of the things that holds me back from ever thinking of driving a truck is the backing of the trailer, getting it into a dock. I feel like
uh,
that's like just terrifying moments.
I it was okay. I banged up a trailer in my first few weeks of employment. That
I feel
is
like
what it
that's
is.
what I would do. Like that's what would happen to me as well. That's why I
You
drive.
know, I don't have a million miles. I'm around a half a million, a little bit more than that, and but I did a lot of short haul around the cities, around the Minneapolis area. That's where I'm from, and I did a lot of backing and a lot. I mean, I'm very good at backing now. I I I don't drive big truck anymore, but you put a boat on the back of my truck and I can make it dance. So, but a 53-foot trailer, I still would not be too worried about it. There's nothing you can put on the back of my 3500 that I'm worried about either. So,
Well, I mean, I've always been told that the bigger the trailer, the easier it is. And I mean, I used to drive like sprinter vans with like digging machines on the back. So like
yeah,
smaller trailers, they're not that hard. But then we had like the compressor and it's really small. And
yeah,
that thing we used to just unhook and push everywhere, bro,
right,
because it is
right.
so difficult to
Well,
get that
your
into.
your wheelbase there is kind of short and it
Yeah,
wants
it's
to turn
nothing.
fast. So, but I mean, there's some truth to that, but it's not 100% accurate. I mean, you can't see. You
That
can only
yeah.
see so much. You have to have a lot of spatial awareness. You have to know how that trailer is going to track, and so if you're trying to put it in a tight spot into a dock and you don't have a lot of room, there's a lot of magic you can make happen on angles and trying to get the trailer to walk over and those type of things.
Yeah, I've seen
That
some
takes a
YouTube
while.
videos. Those guys that do those like you like the I think we're probably thinking of the same video. You know that
Yeah,
video where
yeah,
the guy basically parks with no space like at all? Like
yeah, and you can do a lot with a day cab more than you can,
yeah, sleeper cab.
sleeper unit. So
Okay, but anyways, let's get back on track here. So you went
so
OTR, and the reason you got into it is just because you didn't want to go into law enforcement. Then you did some
yeah, yeah,
dispatch, heavy recovery work. What
yeah.
brought you back to the truck?
So I went to another company and drove locally, doing some bulk work, and then ended up in an office running safety and dispatch. That kind of graduated to a dry van carrier that had about 40 trucks, doing and I went there and was a dispatcher at first. A few months later, I was running customer service. A few months after that, I was running the company. And 6 years later, we had grown that to 1,000 drivers, a brokerage,
Wow.
truck leasing company, a variety of other things. And, we ended up selling the company not because we were stressed or anything. We just were ready to move on. And the owner he owns another trucking company now that's 3,500 trucks. And so he's done well, and he has a variety of other businesses.
Yeah.
So I just didn't go with him. Should have probably went with him. I started my own company then. I had my own trucking company then. I did not go with the ownership. I had the opportunity to, but I didn't see they didn't make it very long. So I had 100 trucks and some warehouse that I had worked out of Minneapolis. And 2009 was not a good year for me. I had a great 2-3 years, and then I had a really bad 3 months. And so 3 years kind of went down the tubes in the 90-day period, and I learned a lot in that 90-day period and closed up that trucking company that I owned. And I decided I actually then went to a refrigerated carrier and doubled that in size. We were a little over 200 trucks, 250 trucks.
So, I mean, I want to go through this with you. What was your
Sure.
first success in logistics? What was the first time where you thought, like, hey, I might be good at this, or maybe not even just good at it, but maybe the time where you realized I like this industry and I want to stay in this industry?
2000. Well, when I liked the industry is when I started working in the app. Well, I knew I liked the industry when I was behind the wheel and started to understand the concept of how to be successful from a rating structure. I was pretty young at the time. I was probably in my early 20s, and I started to understand the business behind trucking. And so the concepts, that's what sort of hooked me into it. I think that's what hooks a lot of people into it.
I think that's where a lot of drivers, to be honest, don't. I think a lot of drivers never get there. Like, they just stay in their driving position. They never think like of the chain that's involved. They're just one piece of it. They never think, where does the freight come from? How does it get to where, like, it's in the broker's hands? How do I get a direct customer? And I think when you start understanding the bigger picture and then you start working in those other sides of it, then you really see logistics for what it is.
Well, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with being the best
Oh, of
driver
course.
that you can be. There's perfectly, it's like an owner operator. I always tell an owner operator, you don't have to go out and do the sales side of being an owner operator. You just want to be the best operator that you possibly can and reduce those costs the most that you possibly can. Because if you can, that's more take home for you. So
Yeah, of course.
your job is to be the cleanest operator and the cheapest operator that you can, because that makes you more money. But yeah, absolutely. A lot of people don't get there, but to your point, a lot of people don't get there to where they kind of, I don't want to use the word evolve, where they don't just graduate into that. They don't graduate to where they want to move into an office out of the seat. And sometimes they don't want to move into an office out of the seat of the truck because they simply just don't want to be in an office. And back then you had to be in an office. Today, lots of people aren't even working in offices. So
I mean, I've said it time and time again, man. Like, I come from a trades background myself, and I never imagined a life where I would be working in an office environment or a desk job. But then I found trucking, which is my favorite, because it like marries the two together. Like, it's not corporate to the point that most other office jobs would have been, and you still get like that trades environment. You still get to speak to people in like certain ways that aren't very professional all the time. So, I mean, for me, like, this industry was like the perfect office job, because it's not really an office job when you think about it.
Yeah. No, I hear you. And I think when you get to larger carriers, very large carriers, it starts to become more like that. But, on
That's
the
true.
smaller side, and even on the small side, if you're at a 200 truck fleet, you still get that kind of environment. But if you're at a 10,000 truck fleet, it's that.
Then it's straight corporate stuff. But okay, so what was the moment where you thought like, hey man, I want to maybe get out of the truck? Or, I mean, how did you move out of the truck then back into the truck?
Well, I moved out of the truck, and the only time I ever went back in the truck is when I owned my own companies. That's kind of when I got back and the truck is just simply I needed to cover a run to Chicago. I had local stuff doing whatever, so I would, or if I was running a company or if I was working at a company, we had a load to pick up. I was, always.
Do you still hold
I was always
your
a leader
CDL now?
I don't. At the time a while ago, I wasn't really working, and nor I travel a ton, and so I just simply didn't have the time to work with a company to make sure I could sustain the CDL. And so about 10 years ago, maybe not 10 years ago, 8 years ago, it just I mean, if you don't maintain it, you're not maintaining an active CDL. It just you lose it now. So
oh yeah, of course. But I always loved those things when I worked in smaller carriers and like we'd have a driver sick or somebody like break down and like the owner of my company would be like, I'm gonna go deliver it, man.
Yeah, and I would guarantee if I ended up in a day-to-day role at a trucking company again, I would end up back with the CDL. I've actually talked. Well, technically, I own a landscaping company as well, and I could just go get that Class A through that company. But once again, I travel a lot.
Yeah, just no need anymore.
Yeah,
but,
I don't necessarily need it, but I'd like to have it just because to me, it's almost like I identify kind of as a driver. So like I can still walk up to the driver, I'll be able to. I identify and I advocate.
Yeah, hey, I mean, you have 500,000 miles behind you. It's not like you're not faking it at all. So,
yeah.
What was your first?
I've spent a lot of nights in a truck. So,
what was your first like massive fail? Like, what was your first time in logistics where like you just messed something up? Besides, scratching a trailer here and there, that's not too bad.
So, no major accidents or anything like that. So, as a driver, I don't recall any. Well, yeah, I don't really recall any major fails as a driver. So I look back at the failure of my business being a huge failure, but on the same hand, I needed to learn that. I was in my early 30s, and I had never lost. So to this point, I had never had a major loss in my entire career. Up to that point, there was everything I touched did really well, very, very well. I was way ahead of the curve to the point that I was on a plan to retire at 50. And, so when I look back at it, I look back at it in a positive light, even though there's a lot of negative that happened. It wasn't a fun period of my life. That's a negative that, I really needed to happen. And it ended up taking a succession of events that kind of lead me to where I am today, because I ended up moving out of that area of the industry and into what I do now, which is advise companies. I needed those stripes to be able to understand what can happen to companies if things don't happen right.
I'm a firm believer, and I mean, I've been through, some mistakes in my life. I'm a firm believer of it sucks in the moment, but when you look back on it, you gained a lot of knowledge from those mistakes. And unfortunately, the bigger the mistake, the more you get to learn from it. And like you said, in the moment, it sucks, man. Yeah. But when you're 3, 4, 5 months down the road past from it, and you look back, even 5 years past from you look back, you're like, wow, like I grew a lot from that decision that I made back then. And I mean, it is what it is. You can't change it. All you can do is learn from it and grow from it.
You just don't do it again. And I can't say I had a lot of control at that time, but you learn, to me, one of my largest lessons at that time was don't put too many eggs in the basket. Don't have a customer footprint that's too large. And, there's a variety of other lessons I learned from it, but your customer exposure can be extremely critical, and if you have customers that suddenly are no longer there for whatever reason, whether it's they filed bankruptcy or you lose them for a reason, that can be a huge detriment to your company if they are 25-35% of your business.
God forbid they're 45, 55, 65% of your business.
Some companies have that, and that is a disaster when those companies
waiting
just
to happen.
Absolutely, and that's ultimately what really caused us to close our doors back then, was just too many negative things happening in a short period of time, mostly focused around that, and industry wise, that was a tough period. It was
Yeah, I mean, economy wise, that was a tough
2009 was
period.
horrible. So $5 a gallon fuel back then, and that's crazy. That was actually my deciding factor. I had a driver call me, and he was like, I just fueled at 5.50 a gallon, and he was in Pennsylvania or in Ohio. I don't remember. Probably not Pennsylvania. We probably wouldn't have been buying fuel in Pennsylvania. Somewhere on the East Coast. And I remember going, I'm just not going to fight this battle anymore. And we just
I'm done.
it was like literally. So, yeah.
But all right, man, take me. Yeah, that's crazy. This guy like 550 fuel in 2000 eyes. I'm
Yeah.
just done, bro.
Right.
Just done.
It's like that's enough. So
Yeah, just fighting the losing battle. But take me through, what are you doing now? What is GLCS?
sure.
What are you guys
Sure.
up to? What's your day to day look like these days?
Yeah. So after I got out of the trucking side, so I stopped becoming an operator. I went to TMW, which is a division or a company owned by Trimble. Actually, it's now Trimble Enterprise, the TMS side of Trimble. And so I was there for 5.5 years, and then I ran a division within that organization. And then I left and started GLCS. GLCS is originally was a management consultancy. We'd help companies align their business, so turnarounds, optimize their business. Basically just fix problems, and that has since fix problems.
That's the best motto.
We were the fixers of the logistics industry, and that's changed now, where we mostly identify as a IT managed services company. And the reason that we identify first and foremost on that is it's our largest component of our company, but we also still do the professional services work that we did before. So it's not just management consulting. We do technology consulting. We help companies select their technology platforms. We help them implement them. We help them support them. We integrate them to other solutions. We do a lot with ELDs. We do a lot with ELD integrations. We have great partnerships with pretty much all the ELDs out there. And pretty much any difficult thing going on with transportation technology, we're involved in it somehow.
So just to get this out of the way, just so I understand this concept better, I mean, who's your target customer? Are you working with the smaller carriers, the larger carriers, brokerages? Like, I mean, what's your biggest customer at this point?
Biggest customer is the biggest trucking companies on the planet and the biggest brokers on the planet. And the smallest ones, we go down. We are really trying to work on programs to continue to go down market and work with smaller organizations. So right now, if you are, a 10, 15 person shop, so if you're, whether that's a brokerage or a carrier, we're doing our best to come up with programs that make sense for organizations like that, certainly through managed IT and what we call application managed services. So what that means is we can become your IT department, we can augment your IT department, or we can just support maybe a little piece of something that you need supported. So, or we can just help you out on a one-off piece. So,
I was just thinking about it, like with the smaller guys. I've been through a lot of carrier companies. They weren't even, some of them weren't even that small. Some had like thousands of trucks. And like there was just always like some department that was a disaster, bro. Whether it was the safety department, whether it was the EFS department, whether it was the billing department or the filing department, like there was always like some like one thing that every carrier could always improve on. It's just like a company like yours would be cool to just go in and be like, oh, this is how you should be doing this thing.
Yeah, and that's the other component. That's that services side of our company, where we do go in and we typically will engage through an assessment where we do an order to cash review of a business. We go through very meticulously and define out what the problems are, or we can look at just a very close component, if it's billing or payroll or dispatch or planning, or if there's truck finders, if we need to look at a capacity plan for brokerage or a freight fraud assessment. We can look at a variety of different things there too. So there's multiple ways to engage, but we are looking to go down market as much as possible and help out. There's just not a lot of tools that have been put out there for the smaller companies.
Yeah.
We're trying to help them out where we can and make it cost effective.
Yeah, man. I just had a meeting today, actually. Can't remember the guy's name now off the top of my head, but he's like a newer guy in our industry. He's still kind of like learning how logistics works, but he comes from a tech background, and we had a good conversation about like the smaller brokerages and carriers need to be able to have the same tech and be as effective as the big dogs are, but not be, like they can't afford to spend the type of money that, a CH would be spending to compete with them. And we were just kind of like brainstorming, like what kind of tech do the smaller brokerages and carriers need to be able to compete with the big guys, and how do we build it at a pace that's actually affordable for that? Because we all know like a smaller brokerage is going to be at a disadvantage with a lot of things compared to the megas. I mean, that's why the megas are the megas. Like that's their advantage, is that they have money to implement stuff.
To compete with them on a technology standpoint, you're really going to struggle. So that's not likely. You compete with them on a service level. I mean, that's where you win. So what's up, Mr. Dickinson? He hates him. You really can't compete with them on a technology level. You look at the spend that CH has and their capabilities, it's astronomical. So you just have to have a clean tech stack as a small broker. And as far as like coming out with, please don't go out and build another
TMS CRM, bro.
Jeez. So don't do that. I mean, if you have a good idea to support those products, more power to you. But at this point, somebody that wants to try to build a asset-based TMS that's solid. There's a few of them that are out there right now that I'm super impressed with, but there's also not a lot of them. So there's the asset-based TMSs. There's a few that are just absolutely amazing, but it's not super saturated like we have with the non-asset side, which is. Then there's some really great non-asset TMSs. I love a lot of them that are out there, but there's like 1,000 of them. I
feel like there's more TMSs in the market in the past 6 to 12 months than there is like any other company in like I feel like there's not even like enough MC numbers that have opened in 6 months. Versus how many TMS
building their own. Yeah, we're building their own. We're doing whatever. More power to people. So
in summer, you guys are consulting. You guys are solving all the problems, mostly at an IT level for bigger companies.
It's a technology and a process level. So those, you look at people who move freight today, and they are really technology companies that are moving freight. There's so much technology involved with this now. You look at the visibility side. I'm not just talking about the visibility platforms, but the whole ecosystem of visibility, whether it's how you're dialed in, who's looking at it. You look at visibility down to the PO level in some cases, from the origin to destination of a order, maybe not even at the carrier side, but from how it's originated from the original manufacturer to the final product that's delivered to the door, final mile, to the consumer. And all the visibility that's involved in that, all the different things that are involved in that. The technology that we're dealing with across the board is just wild. Comparison to what it was 25 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, compare it to probably what it was 5 years ago. I mean, compare 4 years ago.
Yeah, that too. I mean, it's wild. We were just talking
25 years ago, man, it'd be absolutely astronomical, the difference between 25 years ago and today.
25 years ago, I was doing stuff on card filing systems. It was note cards that you'd write down, literally.
Do you have a Rolodex that like the circle thing?
I have a Rolodex. I actually used to dispatch trucks with multiple phones. I had multiple like phones with cords on them. So I know
I
if
mean, what else were you
Dickinson's
gonna
still
do?
looking, if Jeff's still listening, and I'm pretty sure he probably had 4.
Oh, he probably did the
So,
same thing for sure.
yeah. So, uh, but so just absolutely. So to circle back, trucking companies, brokerages, they're technology companies that move freight, and that technology needs to be leveraged in around their processes. And whether you're leveraging the process and the technology to the process or the process to the technology really depends upon what's the best option. And so we help companies figure out how to do that. And when you get down to it, that really is how you do business today, because technology is that wide. It's not. So we're really optimizing the way that you're executing business. So that's ultimately.
Oh, I mean, technology is one of the elephants in the room, and to any company out there who's like, "Oh, we don't really need to pay attention and like grow our tech and think about improving it," like you're gonna fall behind one of these days. It's just a matter. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, because technology is gonna keep moving. And if your company is kind of like saying, "Oh, well, we've been doing it like this for 30 years, we're gonna keep doing it like this," like eventually one day you're gonna get pushed out.
I mean, absolutely. You look at the subject matter that falls within technology, and I started pulling on this rope the other day, which is cybersecurity, and that's a
Yeah, I saw that on your podcast.
Yeah.
I actually listened to your intro on it, and it was
So,
really like interesting.
Yeah, I kind of went overboard on the intro, but I'm starting to do that here lately. So I feel like intros need to be. I feel like I have to do a prepped intro. That's my thing. So, speaking of security and freight fraud, there's so
Yeah, you've summoned them. Shippers are expecting
yeah,
technology now, which is also true.
yeah, absolutely. And what's POI? So you end up with
Yeah, point of information, maybe.
Yeah, I'm not sure. So
I feel like it's just like a joke. It's just gonna be like a dirty joke.
yeah. Fair. I don't know. So, um,
No, but yeah, tech is definitely something you need to constantly work on. It's not something that you can fix overnight. It's not something that you really need to fix overnight. It's something that you have to constantly be paying attention to and evolving with. And definitely, if you can't figure it out, there's people that can help you do that. You guys are definitely one of them. So,
yes, sir. That's what we do.
take me through the name GLCS. What does it stand for? How did you get to that name, man?
So I'm not even going to say perfect order index. Yeah, you got to put that up.
Yeah, I gotta spray paint that on my shirt for the next show.
I'm guessing he's meaning that is how to execute on a perfect order, and I understand. Just knowing Jeff's background in automotive, it's going to be a Lean Six Sigma thing or something. So,
I mean, just knowing Jeff through LinkedIn, I'm sure his is like 99.999%. I mean, the guy's like really on top of his stuff.
Yeah. Which is valid. I mean, you want to execute perfectly on your orders. So if you have that done, you're optimized and all goes well. But GLCS, so it did have a meaning. It doesn't matter anymore. So we kind of it originally stood for Global Logistics Consulting Services, which is a huge thing to say.
Yeah.
I invented it in a Target parking lot in 2016, and it sounded great. And I needed to incorporate a business because I was starting my first engagement, and I just threw it out there. We came up with the name, and boom, we were going.
I mean, yeah, like it looks really good, and it's not like it's a bad name or anything. I was just curious because it's just like I was looking at your name. It has nothing to do with your initials or anything. It's usually people's initials or something.
And so we've killed the name, just gone to the letters. So which it's just the letters now. And it's sort of like there's a few other acronyms that are out there. If you ask what TMW stands for, meaning the software, Tom Weiss is the inventor of TMW, but M means nothing. It actually, Tom didn't have a middle name, so but M sounded good to him, so he just picked M. But that's really so. There's people that just pick letters and numbers, whatever. So,
all right, man. Let's wrap it up.
Yeah,
we'll wrap it up on the GLCS. If anybody needs help with their, improving their operations and optimizations, hit up Nate about that. I want to talk to you about. Let's pick this one. Let's go through freight movement first, and we'll circle back to podcasting, because I've seen some buzz with freight movement. I know it's like Robert Bain's involved.
Yeah.
Whitney, if that's her name, if I got that correct off the top of my head.
Yep.
Yeah, take me through that. What is freight movement? How did that get started? What's your guys' goal? It's like a coalition of people at this point.
Yep, and it's growing. So freight movement was founded by myself and Jenny Malafarina. Jenny owns Virago Marketing, and a year or so ago, actually probably way before that, definitely way before that, I had an idea. Jenny had an idea. We both had these ideas separately. And the idea was to just bring people together in person. So you're ever at a conference, and then after the conference, you go to the bar or whatever, and you have most of your business dealings that actually get done after hours. And so we wanted to create more of an environment like that, but do it in a local setting and create a networking group, because nobody ever gets together in person anymore. You just don't have these environments to create a good ecosystem of people to make that happen. And so we started there, and then Reed Loust a lot, and his Lost Freight Discord inspired me further, because we have drivers, we have tech company CEOs, we have everybody on that Discord just chatting. And I don't have that much time I still pay attention to it, but I don't actually interact with it as much as I would like to. But years ago, it inspired me to just say, let's just get everybody together and let's give this a go. And so we ran a little bit of a pilot, and just bring people together. And every time we do it, it gets bigger. It's let's get together, let's talk, let's get some dealings done, let's make some business happen. There's no major format to it, and we're not really making it happen fast, but it's starting to go faster. So we've had 4 events so far. We had a great event down in Chattanooga. We've had a bunch of events here in Minnesota. We've had more events than that, because even our coffee chats. So we do these coffee chats. The last coffee chat pulled quite a few people too. So you're getting together, you're talking logistics.
You guys just building a community, trying to get some stuff done.
It's a community, but we're trying to make a community where it's in-person connections, because everybody's got a community that's not in person. And of course, we're trying to build stuff that's local. It's a lot of people are doing
it's like that yearly golf trip kind of thing, you do with your friends every year, this or that. But no, I'm happy to hear that, because I don't know how hip you are with like YouTube and like the live streaming generation that's going on. But I imagined it in my head as more of like the streamer house, where it's like all these like celebrities start living in one house together to make like content together. Like, that's my idea of what freight movement was. I was like, oh, these guys are going to get together. They're going to make podcasts together. Like, I thought this was going to be like a fully online coalition of people.
That's actually, so that's part of it, is where does it go from here? Because there's a lot of this. So it starts with these events, right? And
you guys are just building a community slowly.
But there was more to it. There's so much more to it, which is the podcast side of it. Absolutely is that. There's been a lot of discussion around bringing podcasters that just stream to another location. But if we have something going on in Atlanta, I mean, you've been podcasting for a while. A lot of us that have podcasts get to know each other through whatever. At least, we are aware of each other. So if you're going to be in Atlanta and you got an event going on, odds are we're probably, somebody is a podcaster based out of Atlanta, you're probably going to reach out to that person and say, hey, you should come to this event. So, join the movement. There's no cost to it. stream your podcast to the. We're not there yet, but that's going to be an evolution to it. So is podcasting and also,
no, I mean, I think you said it the best. If you start getting into this kind of space, it's not like people want to say it's oversaturated, but like when you think about it, I couldn't name you 15 or 10 off the top of my head. I mean, there's some that we all kind of know about and don't really like. It's oversaturated in the sense that a lot of people have tried or are trying to do it, but it's not oversaturated in the sense that there's too many high quality ones and we can't keep up because there's 82 good podcasts to pay attention to.
Right.
That's my take on it, at least at the current state of things.
There's a lot of podcasts, and that's okay. I mean, you do it for yourself. I mean, when you're going to do a podcast, you do it for yourself. You don't do it for anybody else. If you're going to do it for somebody else, you're probably going to fail. Because that first that's
the best advice, honestly, I've ever heard in my entire life regarding getting into podcasting. And legit, that's so true.
Yeah, you got to have a reason that you want to do it for you, because you'll get 2 episodes in and be like, "This sucks. I'm done."
It's so much harder than you think it's gonna be. So let's get into podcasting. Let's get into how did you start your podcast? What was your original mission? How did you do it, bro? How did you film your first episode? I mean,
so the first episode was just randomly me throwing out my story, so kind of where I came from, and it was maybe 15 minutes long. I just recorded it and threw it up, and it was fine. And I knew I was going to do some sort of content. I had spoke at an event and I didn't do as well as what I wanted to do. I used to speak a lot. Yeah. So I didn't do as well as what I wanted to do. And so I said, I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to start talking a lot. I used to do a ton of public speaking, but I hadn't done public speaking in 6 or 7 years.
Yeah, I mean, podcasting is tough though. Like, I want to just touch on that quickly, like Max. Right? Like, people think it's all fun and games. Like, you just come on here, and people also think that you get into it to be famous or to be somebody. Like, I want to really hammer your point home. Like, I started the podcast just for myself because it was like a cool thing to do that I enjoy doing. And like you said, if you start a podcast to become famous or like to make money or for any other reason other than like a personal reason, like something you enjoy, like it will grind you up and spit you out because it takes a lot to keep up with it and to stay consistent with it.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And, to add to that, if you own a business or own multiple businesses, be prepared to have people help you and be prepared for them to probably feel the burn on it too. It's a lot of work, and they're going to put in effort into it, and it's going to be more than what you think it's going to be.
Take me through the mayor nickname also quickly, just to get back
to
Jeff's thing. Like, how did you become the mayor? Like, what's the joke?
So I was at Manifest last year, and Bane and I were just hanging out, and Susan Mayo, who's our director of sales, was there, and Anthony from Parade, the CEO of Parade, was there, and we were talking, and Susan's like, Nate's just the governor or whatever, because we were talking about conference gravity, and what we met about conference gravity is that you just put Bane and I at a table, and these people would just keep coming to us, and we were just like, we don't have to move. Everybody's just coming to talk to us. And it was we called it conference gravity, and so Susan was like, "It's the mayor," and I think Anthony goes, or Susan said he's the governor or whatever. It's like everybody's coming to see him, and Anthony's like, "Nah, he's the mayor." So and then I show up on Logistics Lounge, so they like, "Yeah, that's your freaking name. That's it." And so I show up on Logistics Lounge like a week later, and they called me the mayor. And then I didn't pick it. I didn't stick it on my title or anything. But I start showing up at places and people just started calling me it. So then,
you didn't choose to be the mayor. The mayor chose you.
You're not. I did eventually say, okay, I'm getting called it enough, and it's if you follow me on social media, I guess the name kind of fits because I have a tendency of being that person. I'm a mediator, so and that's kind of what a mayor does. So they're a mediator, and I have a tendency of being that person. My posts are never too hot. I'm never the guy.
Yeah, you're
that's out
always
there
coming in at a reasonable temperature,
yeah,
regardless
and
of what you're saying. I've
with
noticed that as well.
with some sort of thought leadership. And even if I am going to be scalding somebody, it's going to be with more of a
I'm not mad.
friendship
I'm just
standpoint.
disappointed, like the
Yeah.
fatherly approach.
I think I said that the other day. So,
Yeah,
and I
you're
actually,
like the type of guy that would say
yeah,
something like that.
I
Like,
said exactly that the other day, and it actually turned into a couple people calling me. So, because they were disappointed. So,
yeah. But all right, let's get back on the
yeah.
topic. So you started with your first episode. I mean, after that, how did it go? Like you just
Yeah. So I mean, call
and
out.
what year was this? How long? When did you start the
So
podcast?
we've only been doing it a little over a year.
A little
So we
over a
started
year.
So the first episode, I sort of sprinkled in a few bits and pieces from like June of 2023. But we started an episode. We started consistency November of 2023, and that was 1 to 2 episodes a week starting November of 2023. And one's my monologue, and then the other's the full driving forward.
I mean, people ask me that all the time, like what frequency should they run a podcast at when they're starting? And I'm a firm believer in 1 episode a week, because if you can't commit to 1 episode a week, then you're not going to be able to commit to other things. And I mean, doing a bi-weekly show is fine. I mean, I'm not going to tell anybody how to run their operations, but I feel like 1 episode a week is the sweet spot where you can stay in front of the people, you can keep, making stuff, being around. I feel like that's a good frequency. And if you can't commit to that, then it's only going to get harder.
It depends on what you want to get out of it. What do you want to get? So once again, you're doing it for yourself, right? And if you want to get something out of it, so for me, I wanted to learn how to speak. I want to promote the business, which, you don't ever hear me hard sell GLCS. I got a little commercial I run. I don't take sponsors. So I do whatever I want to do with it because I don't need to take sponsors. It's for the business.
I mean, I sell Carrier Defender by wearing a hat and putting a picture at the bottom.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, exactly. So, but that being said, I wanted to speak. I wanted to be able to speak on that platform better and get better at the production of it. And then, I wanted to bring the message and the knowledge that I've been able to obtain over nearly 3 decades in this industry out to everybody else. And I have since decided that I kind of wanted to be a little bit of a showman with it, which is why the intros are getting.
Yeah, I saw your cybersecurity intro. Like, right. I'm not talking anything bad, but it was like a really compelling intro. It was just, I could tell how much effort you put into like the emotion you had on like making it good.
Kudos to Matt Leffler. He's a little bit of an inspiration on some of those things, but I still had it before that. But there's, if you watch Matt, he gets animated on a few things. He's a little bit of an inspiration on a few things. I love Matt; he's a great guy.
Awesome.
But there's also a few other I have a few other inspirations there. But I just want to take it up a notch. Every time I do an episode, I want to make the next episode a little bit better, do something a little bit different, and see what I can do to just make it a little bit more interesting. And we see that in viewership increase.
So you see, for you have 3 decades experience in logistics, and it was a chance for you to bring your knowledge to the industry and kind of put it out there,
right?
In an easier way, because obviously you can't have a one-on-one phone call with 5,000 people in a month. It's just not going to happen.
Exactly.
So I had like the reverse thing happen to me, where I was like, I mean, I have a lot of experience in the dispatch side, but I'd be naive to say like, I know everything about anything. And for me, the podcast was a way to talk to people like you, where I was like, hey, I could actually get an hour with, some of these guys that I probably wouldn't have business talking to for an hour any other way. And like you said, that whole concept of just trying to be better than your last episode, like that really drives you and it makes you want to like level yourself up. And then when you're like editing your stuff and looking back on it, you're like, I could have done this or that. And it becomes like we talked about in the pre-show, like, you push a little snowball down a hill of like, hey, maybe I'm going to start a podcast, and it just collects as you go, and it turns into like this whole other thing, like that you don't even recognize it from the day that you started.
Yeah, you don't. I mean, I go back to the first couple episodes, and I do want to call out. We had some help from Sheree more in the beginning, and she launched us probably 6 months ahead of where we would have started. So that was a big deal. And then, Missy Hetland's been a huge help too on it over the last year. We just had a great team of people supporting the podcast internally, and it wouldn't be where it's at today if it wasn't for that group of people supporting it. But yeah, you absolutely just continue to learn and grow. And I mean, in my mind, it's a 3-year journey. We're a year plus into it. Am I going to do it forever? I don't know, but I decided I was going to commit to it for at least 3 years, and we're a year into it. So I got a little.
Yeah, that's good to give yourself like some type of a longevity goal, because like we keep saying, people get into it thinking it's all fun and games. It starts to grind you down. You need to, it's a part-time job. You got to pay attention to it and foster it.
It is a sales tool too. I mean, it has been a positive thing for us. And to your point, everybody has a podcast, but not all podcasts are created equals. So not all of them are successful. And consistency, I think we talked about that. Consistency is probably one of the most important things. Get out there, talk to people, invite people on, talk to them. It doesn't matter if you're talking to your coworker, and it doesn't have to be a different guest.
Consistency is the only way to make any type of media work, because you become a community in and of yourself. You become a platform in and of yourself. And if you're not consistent, then why would anybody be consistently paying attention to your stuff? Because you're not even giving them the ability to be consistent with them. And I mean, like I see on my content, it's like the same 20 people religiously watching every short that I drop. And like, I feel like on a day where I don't post, like, shit, man, like, what are they going to watch today? And you start to feel like this obligation of being consistent, because you have people that are just waiting for your stuff to come out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you end up, you have the need to it sort of becomes your job to some extent. So, but you have a following that you kind of need to tend to, and I think that becomes important. But on the startup so consistency is extremely important. But once again, the podcast is about what you want it to be about. And starting out, if you're not comfortable with consistency and you just want to dip your toe in the water, you make it whatever you want it to be. You can do it once every 3 months. But eventually, if you want it to be a successful podcast, it has to be consistent.
Yeah. No, I mean, I also want to say that out loud too. Like, don't take any of the things that I said about consistency and don't start. I mean, start, like you said, make an episode once every 6 months, every 12, like just get comfortable with starting, because if you don't start, you're never going to know what it could have been. And you obviously don't have to be like religiously consistent straight out of the gates where you're trying to figure out everything you want to do with it. So that's also a great point. I want to just take to heart that point where you said, though, like if you're doing the podcast for any other reason than like a personal reason that you want to do it, then like you said, it's probably not going to work out for you long term.
And that personal reason, just always kind of be assessing yourself. That personal reason can change, but if you all of a sudden start, and the grind is constant. So some days you're like, I really don't want to do the podcast this week. And you got to do it. It's that consistency, but you always got to self-reflect and go, all right, why am I continuing to do this? Is this keep that mission going? So it's
constant evolving why, but it has to be a personal one, that's for sure. Switching gears here out of the podcasting realm and into your craziest logistics story, maybe one as a driver, one not as a driver, unless you only have one really good one. I mean,
so as a driver, it's probably craziest one as a driver that comes to mind is like this would never, well, it probably would happen today, but my second dispatch as a driver. So I get my Class A, and I'm given my truck, and this is back when it wasn't even so we didn't have a condo sleeper back then. It was like, coffin, and so it was like a 48-inch sleeper. And that was it. And so you had get my truck, and I get my first dispatch. It was to pick up a load of steel case furniture going to Manhattan. And I've never driven a load in a truck by myself ever.
That's just a mess. Like that's
just the stupidest idea ever, right? So now being, how much experience I currently have, like that's a great way to have a serious accident. But that was my first dispatch. My second dispatch was a load of hazardous material going to Southern California, and I was routed over Loveland Pass.
through Colorado.
Yeah. So I had to go up over top of the pass, and it was winter.
Bro, I mean, that's like two of the stupidest dispatch plays I've ever heard in my entire life.
So 2 back-to-back dispatches, brand new driver, no questions asked.
Absolutely disgusting. This way. Wait, did you do both of those things?
I did. Yeah, I took both loads. So
no, yeah, that's absolutely unacceptable dispatch from anybody. Like that has to be illegal. You can't do stuff like that. I mean, I don't even send like drivers with 40 years experience through Colorado in the winter. It's just like it's not worth anybody's life to do stuff like that. I mean, in my opinion, like kudos to the guys that go through that, and I know that those loads need to happen, and somebody needs to do them. But I've always had the policy on a personal level, like I just won't dispatch trucks like into those. I just won't do it, like just moral reasons. Like,
I mean, it's fine to dispatch him if the guy's experienced. I mean, that's what you got to do.
Or yeah, I mean that's a lot more fine.
Yeah, you route around it, but to send a new guy over that route is just
to send a new guy into Manhattan is absolutely like insanity, bro.
So first off, I don't even want to. I've driven a truck probably a dozen times in the New York, and I don't ever want to do it as an owner of a company. I have no interest in that. So
I had a company once we heard about that their truck got stuck and they needed to get a helicopter to come turn the trailer around, and it cost like $250,000, and then they never sent trucks ever again over there.
That's crazy. That seems pretty high, but I guess requires a pretty big helicopter. So then the crazy stories. Man, I have probably 25 million crazy stories on the office side of transportation. But they all, you have to sit there and be like, oh yeah, that one. So
I would just pick the one that kind of pops out at you first.
Yeah, I mean, one of them, I remember we used to haul a lot of water. So one of my guys that works with me is just sitting over here. I should probably ping him. He's got all kinds of crazy stuff. So, but we used to haul a lot of water, and this guy's truck started overheating. So he popped the seal on the load of water. It was the best part on this one is he's hauling a load of water to a military base. And so in his infinite wisdom, he was overheating, and he popped the seal on the load of water going to the military base to get water out to put in his truck. So, and of course, that water never went to the military base. It's not getting in with the pop seal. So, we have that one. And I remember, nowadays it wouldn't be a big deal, but
I mean, luckily it's just water, bro. You can just tell him, hey, I'll buy all this water from you. Like, it's not gonna be like that much money, bro.
It wasn't that. Well, yeah, I've got, now that I'm sitting here talking about it, I mean, I remember, we had a load of shit. Oh no, I got the story now. Okay, so we hired this sales guy from a shipper of us. So this guy's we hired the shipper. It was his son, the traffic manager's son. We hired this guy, and so he was a brand new sales guy just out of college. And so our director, this broker in California owed us a ton of money, like $200,000-300,000. And
that's a ton of money, bro.
Like, yeah, so it was and it was fine. He was paying us up but all of a sudden he stopped, and so And maybe I'm wrong on the dollar figure, but it was still a good chunk of cash. And so our director of sales was out there visiting customers, and so he walked up to their office, and their office was closed or locked, but he could see someone was in it. So he kicked the door down with this new sales guy, and so he literally kicked the door down, and he comes flying in, and he talked with them or whatever. But the guy was like completely freaked out.
Yeah, really?
The sales guy was losing it. The new sales guy was losing it. And so they fly back. The new sales guy quits. He was
the
done.
sales guy quit because of that.
The sales guy quit because of it. And so then we were talking to the.
I mean, he probably didn't belong in this industry.
Yeah. No, that's a good one. So yeah, I'm sure as I sit here, there's other ones too, but that was a good one.
I mean, hey, if nobody hit each other, bro, you just kick the door down and start yelling at them. If somebody owes you $100,000, $200,000. I don't think you're gonna be like polite.
Police were called and everything, and it was
I mean, I don't know how polite are you supposed to be to somebody that owes you $100,000. They're ducking your phone calls. You see them in the office, they're not answering the door. I would also kick the door down. I don't care. Call the police, dude. Like, you're not going to jail for breaking a door. That's for sure. So, I mean, that's a crazy story. I like that the sales guy quit at the end of the story.
Yeah, that's the kicker on it. The sales guy came back, literally just quit. The next day he was done. Came back. So.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. All right, man. I want to get into. We got 3 things left. We'll be out of here in less than 10 minutes. Right. When you're not improving people's, companies, when you're not doing the podcast, when you're not building freight movement, when you're not traveling, I mean, what are your hobbies outside of all the work stuff?
So, in the winter, I just hide. I live in Minnesota, so you just hide. We were talking about that.
As a guy that was born and raised in Canada, you just hide from that all 6 months.
We'll see what happens, but maybe I'll move somewhere south. We've talked about that, but in the summertime, I spend a lot of time on the lake. We've got a nice boat. We enjoy, spending as much time as we can on the lake. We do some off-roading. I golf with Matt Dahl as much as I can. So there's pictures of those out there, but no, I try to golf as much as I can, but that I usually am unsuccessful on it.
Through my experiences with Matt Dahl, he's very much convinced me. I thought he was joking at first when we first started talking to each other. He's like, everyone from Minnesota is the best, man. You're gonna love them. And I was like, man, I don't know anything about Minnesota. I don't know about this. And then every person I meet from Minnesota, I absolutely have a great podcast. Or just a great time talking. Like Matt Dahl was right in the end. Everyone from Minnesota is super chill. Because I'm Canadian, you guys are almost Canadian. It's the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I told you pre-podcast. Minnesota is more Canadian than most Canadians. So I mean, there's a lot to that. So.
Because you guys are from what I understand, you guys are more the rednecky Canadians. You guys are the guys that are in the bush. You guys are the guys that have the ATVs and go hunting and have boats and farm.
Yeah, it's kind of
you guys are the rural Canada types. Because Toronto is a different place. It's not really Canada. Toronto is basically an American city.
Albertans. At this point. Yeah, we're more like the Albertans.
Yeah, Newfoundland kind of guys. Alberta.
I wouldn't go that far.
Not Newfoundland.
Yeah. I'd be
Alberta's fine.
Alberta, yeah. I mean, Calgary, Edmonton, that type of area. But
we don't talk about Yukon, none of Yellowknife.
Yeah, no. I've been to Yellowknife actually. So, but no, not that crazy. So, we do have some people. We do have some people in the northern part of the state that could probably rival those types. So. But
all right, man. So basically, just in the winter, we're doing the same thing. A bunch of chilling inside, staying away from the cold. In the summer, on the boat, on the lake, outside, that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
When we get into sports, you said you play golf. Do you watch golf? Is that the only sport you watch? You look like a football guy. You probably watch
football. You got it. So, and I don't get enough. I don't follow football as close as I once did. At one point in my life, I could have told you everything there was going on with professional football and college football, but now I just don't have that time. So, So I don't spend the
Same
time
thing
watching
happened
sports.
with soccer. I mean, I used to watch a bunch of soccer. Now I watch one team if I'm lucky every weekend, one
that's what
game.
I'm
But
at.
I even miss that sometimes. As far as music goes, I mean, what's your playlist looking like? What's it look like?
I'm all over the place. I like all kinds of music, any and all things for the most part. You know, I'm a child of the '80s. I grew up. I was born in the '70s, but you know, I like all kinds of classic rock. I like. I'll even get into some rap, country. You know, it just. I'll even do classical music.
What kind of like name like 2 rap songs that you like that you're listening
So
to?
actual. So I do like Eminem. So you know, but particular name.
No, I mean just saying
Or
Eminem, that's
song.
already good enough.
Yeah,
Like,
fair enough. So, country, you know,
I mean, honestly, so
Jelly
this is
Roll.
my
I'm liking Jelly Roll a lot.
Jelly
He's kind of
Roll.
good,
Yeah. He's not
I
bad
really like
actually.
his stuff lately. So,
I'll run you through my quick country music story. I used to absolutely despise it, and then in my last year of high school, like my mom moved me to like the middle of nowhere, like some random small city, and I went to school with like a bunch of like rednecks. Everyone had pickup trucks, jeeps. Like we went into like the parties were like in a forest, dude. Like if you didn't have 4-wheel drive, you weren't even making it to the parties. Like this type of an environment, you know. Like my buddy once reversed his car into like the boom of a backhoe that was parked in his driveway. Like this was the type of people that I was going to school with. Like,
yeah.
and they got me into country music, man. I mean, when you're in a certain environment around certain people with nature, like I mean, it makes sense. It is like easy to get involved with country music in the right place at the right time. So I give it a pass. All right, man. I got my newest question. We've switched out the train and transportation question. It no longer exists. So we move into how often do you think of the Roman Empire?
Of the Roman Empire. Surprisingly, right now, a little bit. So, but not usually, not very often.
What's got you thinking of the Roman Empire these days?
Because I'm contemplating going to that area of the world. So, but outside of that, I don't really think much about the Roman Empire. So, you know,
Yeah, I mean, if you make it out to Rome, let me know. I was almost going to be there for a month, and then I canceled my plans. But I'm still going to go there for a month. Like I'm very close to Rome. Like it's like right next to me. So.
Gotcha.
I mean, that's it, man.
Where are you then?
So I'm in Serbia, but I move around a lot. So like I can't even lock down a city anymore. Like Novi Sad, Belgrade. Like man, I've moved like 5 times in the past like 1 year. I don't know why. Like it's just a lot of country. Like I don't know. I just keep moving around, seeing what's going on within Serbia. Chicken wing choices, man. You don't let me down on this one. When you eat chicken wings, are you a drums or a flats guy?
I'm gonna go drums.
Ranch or blue cheese dipping sauce?
Ranch.
Breaded or non-breaded? I think about this one because we're right there. Just breaded or non-breaded wings.
Not breaded. Do we miss on the breaded? You a breaded guy?
I mean you got the drums, which is like the best thing. Like I hate flats, bro. I absolutely hate flats. Yeah. Ranch is acceptable because blue cheese is an acquired taste, so I never care who picks what there. But breaded versus non-breaded, you gotta get breaded wings, man.
I wouldn't not. It's not like I'll decline a breaded wing, but
yeah, but if you had to choose,
yeah. I'm typically I don't you know, I typically shy away from carbs, you know, so that's where I taste is what the taste is. So.
It is what it is.
Yes,
1
sir.
out of 3 on chicken wing choices. You are thinking of the Roman Empire. Maybe we'll meet in Rome and then we'll film a video about the Roman Empire in Rome. That would be hilarious.
When in Rome.
Thank you, man, for coming on. Nice to meet you. Like this is our first time actually getting to speak with each other.
Right.
So that's always cool. Thanks for coming through.
Absolutely.
Enjoy your last trip. Enjoy your holiday season. It's about to be here for you.
Absolutely. Appreciate the time and take care.
Yeah, keep in touch, man, and have a good rest of your day.
You too.
that's going to wrap up podcast episode 59 with Nate Johnson, founder at GLCS, as well as being part of the freight movement, as well as having his own podcast. If you're a company that needs help, with your tech and optimizations, hit up Nate Johnson. If you just want to talk to a cool guy, hit him up as well. That's going to be it for me, everybody. Have a good rest of your night.